So they're going to start teaching consent education from as young as 5 years old, so kindergarten, foundation years. And then slowly students will build upon that over time. And by year 5 and 6, concepts such as gender stereotypes will be come into play. And then when students get older and reach high school, they will learn about coercion and power and how all of these things interact, so that when they learn about sexual consent, these concepts make sense and they understand in a holistic nature.
Yeah, and so how will this be incorporated in the curriculum? Is it going to be a standalone subject, or is it going to be part of another subject? And give us some examples, say, of kids as young as 5. What are some of the foundational things they are going to be taught at that age, which will be built on later?
So it will be incorporated in Australia's physical health and education curriculum, so PDHPE, which is mandatory subject for all students to do from foundation until year 10. That's why it doesn't go in year 11 and 12, because schools then go off and do their own end of leaving exams, and it's different. So it will be taught in the classroom, potentially one lesson a term or one lesson a year, however long it takes to tick off those learning outcomes that schools now need to do in order to satisfy the minimum standards that are in the federal curriculum. What was the second half of your question?
Yeah, and so just so people understand this, give us an example of what will be taught to, say, kids as young as 5.
So for young children, it will be really simple concepts. It will be teaching students to ask for permission, teaching students how to give permission, teaching students how to say no when someone asks for permission, and also normalizing and teaching students help-seeking strategies around problematic behaviours to get rid of taboos around silencing culture from a really young age.
How confident are you that this will make a change?
I think down the track, this is a massive step in a good direction for Australia. I think 2021 showed us that we have a serious problem as a country. We are currently living in a situation where sexual violence thrives and women are discriminated against every single day. But I think education is a really good first step for transformation, for long-term structural change, and to ultimately change the culture around how we understand and see these things.
And how are you going to continue to be involved in this?
I'm hoping that I'm meeting with the PM on Tuesday, and in that meeting I will be flagging with him and speaking to try to figure out something together about how we can start measuring the impact of this consent education, because it's no good just implementing it and leaving it. We need to start understanding the attitudes and beliefs of young Australians and how these change over time, and also the prevalence of sexual violence, because what I often see is you see statistics of sexual violence that usually starts at 15 and upwards. And I always look at that and think, I'm not included in that. I was 13. So I think we need a better understanding of how teenagers are experiencing sexual violence, because I think it's quite different to the way that perhaps adults or children do.
And how are you going to what are you going to say to the PM on Tuesday about how it should be assessed, or how it can be assessed, so there are markers?
Yeah, I believe we need to start surveying mass and putting a priority on understanding the reality of this problem, because when we have radical transparency about it, and when the problems come to light, the way they did with the 6,700 testimonies on my website, action gets done, because it's undeniable that there is a serious problem. And currently Australia is having human rights violations all around the country all the time, and we need to put an end to that as soon as possible.
Yeah, and Chanel, you mentioned your website there, and this is where you came to prominence in the last year or a bit. It's amazing that it's happened so quickly. You put that call out, so many people responded with their stories of sexual assault. Have you already heard from some of them in the last 12 hours since this news broke, and what have they been saying to you?
Yeah, I've been absolutely inundated with such kind messages, like hundreds of Instagram messages, and I think there's like 400 comments on the post that I said announcing and something like that. And I'm so thankful for every single one of those people, because every single person who was willing to put a testimony on the website in a public space had such a large role to play in this change happening, because it really was the absolute wave of numbers that came in all at once that made this happen so quickly.
Yeah, it is pretty phenomenal. Chanel Contos, thanks so much for talking to us, and congratulations once again. It's not often that we get to speak, we speak to so many people who are pushing for change, and it's just not often that we get to speak to someone who's achieved it so quickly.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.